Okay, so now that we understand the various aspects of liminality, adult transitional theory, and transfer shock, and more specifically, culture shock, the authors Ivins, Copenhaver, and Coclanes start to discuss in their article the various ways in which we as higher ed practitioners can provide campus supports to address the challenges that we could anticipate our transfer students experiencing as a result of transfer issues, transition issues, and transfer shock issues. So, first, the authors note that it's important to acknowledge that success for transfer students really requires commitments from both students as well as higher education institutions. And so, as my teammates have already discussed, students can surely do things like engage in campus activities and connect with their faculty within their program of study and engage in targeted programming. However, it is incumbent upon institutions to look at what level of responsibility we can extend to making sure that transfer students are successful. And so, particularly since we are in a program here at SDSU, which has a cornerstone that focuses on institutional responsibility, so that we can really address the critical issues that community colleges across America are facing. And so I thought that it's important that at this point in the presentation that we really focus on what we can do as practitioners within our institutions to make sure that transfer students have an opportunity for success. And so, that being said, we definitely want to make sure that there are intentional partnerships between 2 year colleges and 4 year institutions. It's not enough just for the 2 year college to have a transfer center. It should also be something that the 4 year college is mindful of having it as a receiving entity at the 4 year college so that the student really can make a smooth transition. I even think that this applies to dual credit students as we really talk about trying to transition them from, in some cases, middle school to high school to college, sometimes all simultaneously. And so we just really need to be mindful about the structures that we have in place within our institutions to support this type of navigation that we expect our students to kind of flow through effortlessly. Um, and I think one of the main things we want to highlight is that if we really are committed to transfer student success, then institutions really have to look at the amount of resources and the amount of time that we are committing to supporting um, building transfer friendly communities. Are we embedding these strategies within our strategic plans and the various projects and programming that's built into our institutions as we plan year to year on what we choose to focus on. I firmly believe that the thing where you spend your time and where you spend your money is what you really value, and so we want to be mindful that we include transfer students and their success into both our resource planning and within our time. So there are a variety of ways in which institutions can approach developing campus supports for transfer students or students experiencing transition, and that can occur both informally and formally. Some of the informal ways that institutions can begin to plan for transfer student needs are first by making sure that students have early connections and access to advisors that have specific transfer knowledge and expertise. And so that might look like college visits, having 4-year transfer universities set up tables and that sort of thing at 2-year schools, and probably more important is to make sure that there are there is at least some type of knowledge embedded within um, 2-year academic advising offices um, that really are knowledgeable about the connecting programs or the transfer programs that are relevant, particularly to the student population that the community college serves. And so, by having an in house advisor that has the knowledge and information, students may feel more comfortable connecting and feeling like they can access the information and that it's something that could mitigate their anxiety and fears that they might feel in thinking about transferring to the unknown of a 4-year. Also, peer to peer connections are an important informal strategy to connect students to transfer and transition information. Many times, students will rely on the experiences of other students. They want to know, how did you complete the financial aid application, or who should I go and talk, which advisor should I go and connect with in the advising office? So they trust their peers, they trust those experiences, and I think you find that also in special population groups as well. I know um, in my experience in working with student veterans, one of the biggest recruitment strategies is really word of mouth, because students will share if they've had a good experience um, at an institution in the same way that they'll share if they've had a poor one. And so we really want to make sure that we're maximizing peer to peer interactions and creating a space or programs like peer advising or peer mentoring where students have the chance to connect with students who've gone on and transferred successfully, and they can access those students and ask questions. The last thing is we really want to be intentional about our web materials, our print materials, making sure that we're keeping information updated and accurate, so that they can clearly guide transfer students to the appropriate resources and relevant information that will help them to be successful. There are some students who, as much as we might like for them to come in and talk to an advisor, they are first navigating our websites and looking at our printed information. And so they're doing that from home before they make a decision whether or not to come onto our campus. And so we want to make sure that that information is high quality, accurate, and helpful. And then we have more formal supports. A common support that many institutions have currently are transfer orientations. And this is a good thing because we really want to make sure that the information that a transfer student receives is relevant to them and coming into an institution that may be extremely different from a student who's brand new to college or a first time in college student. And so we want to make sure that we are addressing all of the various concerns and questions and challenges that may come with transitioning from a 2-year college to a 4-year college, and help them to help expose them, I guess, to the expected culture and expectations of the 4-year where they're seeking to continue their education. Summer bridge programs are another example of a formal intervention that can significantly help transfer students to bridge from the unknown to the known. Summer bridge programs can be formatted in a variety of ways. Some of them are residential, allowing the student to stay overnight and really immerse themselves in the college culture. Um, it, and some of them are more, daytime only, but they may be for a couple of weeks, where again students are seeing themselves within the higher education institution and seeing themselves as students. I think that intentional program planning is crucial for successful summer bridge programs, and they should include exposure to the academic rigor that is expected at the college, as well as give them opportunities to be exposed to social settings, and just being around like-minded scholars to help really validate their themselves in within this new space of learning. And lastly, institutions should be mindful of the wraparound support services that we're making available for transfer students. They should be specific to the needs that transfer students may experience, particularly untraditional transfer students, and so there may be financial, social, and academic concerns that we need to look at. How can we make sure that we have either space on our website or have space on our campuses or both that really connect students to housing, childcare, food, job assistance, tutoring, counseling, and any other resources that can help to make them successful. And so it's these combined efforts to identify, create, and cultivate both informal and formal interventions for transfer students that should ultimately really it's both an investment in transfer students' persistence, their success, and their completion. So, in conclusion, we've explored liminality, adult transition theory, and transition shock. All three of these theories address students' efforts to shift from one state to the next and really trying to navigate the in between space en route. Research tells us that this experience varies amongst different student groups based on who the student is and what they've experienced prior to attempting to make the educational transition. But the good news is that while students can certainly help themselves, institutions can also be intentional about creating both informal and formal structures to ensure transfer student success. So, that being said, I'm going to hand it back off to Jamie and Diana, who will now transition you into an activity. Thank you.